Money. It's something we all deal with every single day, yet so few of us truly understand it. We think it's about intelligence, degrees, or business knowledge. But Morgan Housel begins by telling us one thing that changes everything. Doing well with money has little to do with how smart you are, and a lot to do with how you behave. This book is not about numbers or charts. It's about human behavior. Because how we think, fear, hope, and act determines how rich or poor we become. And today, we'll explore all 20 timeless lessons from the psychology of money. Lessons that can change the way you see wealth, success, and happiness forever. Lesson 1. No one's crazy. Understanding the hidden psychology behind every financial decision. Have you ever looked at someone's financial decision and thought, what on earth were they thinking? Like, why would someone earning $500 a month buy an iPhone worth $1,500? Or why would someone who already has millions risk it all just to get a little more? We often shake our heads and say, they're crazy. But in the world of money, as Morgan Housel beautifully says, no one's crazy. Because when it comes to money, people don't make decisions based on logic or formulas. They make decisions based on their own experiences. Let's take a deep dive into this truth. Imagine two people. One grew up during the Great Depression, a time when banks failed, people lost homes, and hunger was normal. The other grew up in the booming 1990s, surrounded by rising stock markets, new technology, and prosperity. Now ask both of them, is investing in the stock market safe? Their answers will be completely different. The first person might say, never trust the markets. You could lose everything overnight. The second might say, of course it's safe. That's how you get rich. Who's right? Both. Because their financial decisions aren't based on what's true for everyone. They're based on what's true for them. That's the beauty and the danger of financial psychology. We don't act on global data, we act on personal history. Morgan writes, your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.0000001% of what's happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works. Let that sink in. A person who grew up in poverty sees risk differently than someone raised in abundance. If you've ever gone to bed hungry, saving money doesn't feel like a spreadsheet rule. It feels like survival. Someone born into wealth might see investing as a game, a way to multiply comfort. But for a struggling worker, money isn't about comfort. It's about safety, dignity, and sometimes even self-respect. That's why two people can look at the same opportunity, a business, a loan, or a stock, and see opposite realities. One sees danger, the other sees potential. Neither is wrong. They're just wearing different glasses made from their past experiences. Our generation thinks inflation is just a boring economic term. But for those who lived through the 1970s, inflation was a nightmare. Prices rising daily, salaries not keeping up. For them, saving cash in the bank feels foolish. For us, it feels responsible. In the US, people who grew up during the Great Depression often avoided the stock market for the rest of their lives. Meanwhile, those who grew up during the tech boom of the 1990s invested fearlessly in every new startup. Both groups learned lessons from the eras they lived in, and both acted accordingly. Economists Ulrike Malmenier and Stefan Nagel studied 50 years of financial data and discovered something fascinating. People's willingness to take risk isn't determined by age, education, or intelligence. It's shaped by the economic conditions they experienced in their early adult life. If you grew up during a booming stock market, you'll likely invest more later in life. If your youth was full of recessions and inflation, you'll invest less, no matter what textbooks tell you. So your decisions today may not come from rational thought, they come from emotional memories buried deep in your past. Consider lottery tickets. We all know the math. The odds are nearly impossible. Yet, in the US, low-income households spent 4 times more on lottery tickets than high-income families. It's easy to judge and say, that's stupid. But let's pause. If you live paycheck to paycheck, if every day feels like a fight for survival, if saving seems impossible and the future looks hopeless, that $2 lottery ticket isn't just a gamble, it's a dream. It's not about winning. It's about feeling hopeful for a moment. For someone who has nothing, a tiny chance feels better than no chance at all. Morgan writes, "We are paying for a dream, and you may not understand that because you are already living a dream. So when we call others crazy, we forget that their choices make perfect sense in their world." Here's something you might have never thought about. The entire concept of personal finance is brand new in human history. For thousands of years, people worked until they died. There was no retirement plan, no 401k, no credit score. The first official retirement system, Social Security, started in the 1930s. The 401k, created in 1978. The Roth IRA, introduced in 1998. Yes, the idea of investing for retirement is younger than many people watching this video. We're all still learning how to manage money. We've had centuries to learn how to grow crops, but only a few decades to learn how to grow wealth. So when people make financial mistakes, buying too much house, drowning in debt, panicking in a crash, they're not crazy. They're beginners. We all are. Money is emotional. It touches every human desire: safety, power, love, status, and fear. So when someone makes a financial choice, they're not using Excel sheets. They're using feelings. You can't model fear of losing a job on a spreadsheet. You can't measure the shame of debt or the pressure to look successful at family weddings. People make financial decisions not in classrooms, but at dinner tables, in emergencies, and under emotional pressure. That's why Morgan says, few people make financial decisions with a spreadsheet. They make them at the dinner table, where ego, pride, and fear mix with hope. And that's the truth. Money decisions are stories we tell ourselves to feel safe, loved, and in control. Every financial action starts with a story. I'm buying this car because I deserve it. I'm investing in crypto because it's the future. I'm saving money because I never want to feel helpless again. Each story feels right to the person telling it, even if it looks foolish to someone else. So when your uncle hoards gold under his bed, or your friend puts all his savings in risky stocks, or your parents still keep cash hidden at home, remember, they're not crazy. They're just following the script life wrote for them. Consider 2 families living on opposite sides of the world. In the US, a young man invests in index funds because that's what financial blogs say is smart. In rural India, another man invests in land and gold because in his world, that's what has always protected families. Both are right because both are responding to the reality of their world. A Chinese worker in a factory might say, "This job is hard, but better than what I had before." An American might look at the same job and say, "That's exploitation." Who's right? Again, both, because context shapes judgment.
The same goes for money. Your definition of risk, success, or security depends on the life you've lived. And that's why no one's crazy. During the 2008 financial crisis, unemployment in the US averaged around 10%. But for some groups, it was far higher, nearly 50% for young, uneducated workers. So when economists say the economy recovered, it didn't recover equally for everyone. For one person, 2008 was a temporary setback. For another, it was a life-changing tragedy. So even when people live in the same country, they don't live in the same economic reality. That's why debates about money often turn emotional, because we're not arguing about numbers, we're arguing about experiences. Let's imagine a person who's afraid of investing in the stock market. To you, they seem irrational. Don't they know markets go up long term? But what if, in their childhood, their father lost everything in a crash? They're not rejecting logic, they're protecting their heart. Money is never just about money. It's about trust, fear, and memory. When you understand that, you stop judging and start empathizing. The most powerful takeaway from this chapter is humility. The humility to say, I might not fully understand why others make their choices. I might not even understand all of my own. When you realize everyone's just trying to survive the best they can, you stop comparing, stop judging, and start focusing on your own journey. Financial peace comes not from control, but from compassion. Number 1, everyone's crazy, but for a reason. Our financial behavior is shaped by our past experiences, not logic. Number 2, personal history beats financial theory. What worked for someone else might not work for you because your life is different. Number 3, money is emotional. Every decision reflects a story: fear, hope, love, or security. Number 4, we're all new to this game. Modern finance is young and we're still learning. Mistakes don't make you stupid, they make you human. Number 5, empathy is the real intelligence. The more you understand others' experiences, the wiser you become with your own money. So the next time you see someone make a financial move that looks crazy to you, pause. Instead of asking, what's wrong with them? Ask, what might they have gone through to see the world this way? Understanding that question, that empathy, is the first step to mastering your own psychology of money. We've just learned that people make financial choices based on emotion and experience. But here's the twist. If our decisions aren't fully in our control, then how much of our success or failure is really our own doing? Is it possible that what separates the rich from the poor isn't just behavior, but something else entirely? Something called luck. That's what we'll uncover in the next chapter. Lesson 2, Luck and Risk, the invisible forces behind every fortune and failure. Lesson 2, Luck and Risk, the invisible forces behind every fortune and failure. In life, we often look at successful people and say, they worked hard, they were smart, they deserved it. And when we see someone fail, we whisper, they made bad choices, they weren't disciplined enough. But here's a truth that most people don't want to hear. Success is never entirely earned, and failure is never entirely deserved. Because in between every great fortune and every tragic downfall, there are two silent forces always at play: luck and risk. They are twin siblings, invisible, unpredictable, and unbelievably powerful. Let's explore how they quietly shape the story of our lives. In 1968, a young boy named Bill Gates went to a small private school in Seattle called Lakeside School. At the time, almost no high school in the entire world had access to a computer, but Lakeside was special. A math teacher named Bill Duggal had a bold idea. He convinced the school's Mothers Club to use $3,000 from a fundraiser to lease a computer terminal for the students. Think about it. In the 1960s, this was revolutionary. Even most universities didn't have such access. And there, in that tiny computer room, Bill Gates fell in love with programming. He spent hours, nights, weekends learning to code. He became obsessed, curious, unstoppable. By the time he was 13, he was already writing software. And years later, that curiosity became Microsoft. But here's the question Morgan Housel asks. What are the odds? Let's do the math. In 1968, there were around 303 million high school-age students in the world. Only 300 of them attended Lakeside, the only one that had a computer. Bill Gates just happened to be one of those 300. That's a 1 in a million chance. And Gates himself later admitted, if there had been no Lakeside, there would have been no Microsoft. Now, of course, Bill Gates was brilliant, hardworking, and visionary, but it's impossible to deny he was also lucky. He was lucky to be born at the right time, in the right place, with the right opportunity. But here's the story you've probably never heard. Alongside Bill Gates and Paul Allen at Lakeside was another prodigy, Kent Evans. Kent was Gates's best friend, a brilliant student, brilliant coder, and equally ambitious. They dreamed of changing the world together. Bill once said, "We used to talk on the phone for hours every night about the future." Kent was every bit as talented as Gates. He could have been one of the founders of Microsoft, but fate had other plans. Before finishing high school, Kent Evans died in a mountaineering accident. Just like that, one twist of chance, and the story ended. Bill Gates went on to become one of the richest men on Earth. Kent Evans' name faded into history. Morgan Housel writes, Bill Gates experienced 1 in a million luck. Kent Evans experienced 1 in a million risk. The same world that gifted Bill his chance took away Kent's. Both forces, luck and risk, are part of the same coin, and that's the real secret behind every success and every failure. Luck and risk are what make life both exciting and unfair. They remind us that no one's success is purely deserved, and no one's failure is purely their fault. You might make brilliant choices and still fail because of bad timing, bad luck, or events beyond your control. Or you might make a reckless move and still win, not because you're smart, but because you got lucky. The world is complex, random, and deeply interconnected. That's why Morgan warns us to be careful when we judge people's outcomes. Don't assume every rich person is brilliant. Don't assume every failure was foolish.
He writes, when judging people's financial success, it's never as good or as bad as it seems. Let's look at 2 historical examples that prove how blurry the line is between genius and madness. Cornelius Vanderbilt, one of America's richest men, built his railroad empire in the 1800s. He often broke laws, manipulated rules, and bullied competitors. When someone told him his actions were illegal, he replied, "You don't suppose you can run a railroad in accordance with the laws of New York, do you?" It's tempting to say, what a bold visionary. But let's be honest, if things had gone slightly differently, he could have been remembered as a criminal, not a pioneer. The same goes for John D. Rockefeller. He built the Standard Oil empire using strategies that were both brilliant and ruthless. At one point, a judge even called his company no better than a common thief. Yet, history celebrates Rockefeller as a genius businessman. So what's the difference between visionary and villain? Sometimes it's just luck, being on the right side of history. As Morgan puts it, the line between bold and reckless can be a millimeter thick and only visible in hindsight.
Now, don't get it wrong. This doesn't mean success is only luck. Hard work, intelligence, and persistence matter a lot. But we must understand the equation correctly. Success equals skill plus luck. Failure equals mistake and risk. Both luck and risk exist in every story, yet most people only focus on one side. When things go well, we say, I worked hard. When things go bad, we say, I was unlucky. But when others fail, we often say, they were stupid. That's human nature. We protect our ego by oversimplifying the truth. Morgan calls this the asymmetry of judgment. We interpret other people's failures as flaws and our own as bad luck. Economist Robert Shiller, who won the Nobel Prize, once said, "The thing I want to know most about investing is the exact role of luck in successful outcomes." Why? Because no one can measure it precisely. If there are 1 million investors in the world, statistically, some of them will become billionaires purely by chance, even if their strategy isn't special. But we never call them lucky, we call them geniuses. We write books about them, interview them, and try to copy their methods. And that's where the danger lies. Because if their success was mostly due to timing and chance, copying their strategy might not work for you. It could even destroy you. Morgan gives a simple rule. Be careful who you praise, and be careful who you look down upon. Instead of copying individuals, study patterns. Don't idolize Warren Buffett. Study why patience and discipline work across time. Don't envy Elon Musk. Study how innovation and risk-taking shape industries. Focus on what's repeatable. Because extreme success is often tied to extreme luck, and luck isn't repeatable. But consistency, humility, and time are. When you recognize the power of luck and risk, two beautiful things happen. 1, you become more humble about your own success. You realize that your victories weren't entirely your doing. Life gave you chances others never got. 2, you become more forgiving of others' failures. You stop blaming people for every bad outcome because you know that sometimes life just hits harder. As Morgan wrote in a letter to his son, not all success is due to hard work, and not all poverty is due to laziness. Keep this in mind when judging people, including yourself. Risk isn't always a villain. In fact, it's the price we pay for possibility. If there were no risk of failure, there would be no chance of success. Every reward comes with uncertainty, and that's what makes it valuable. You can't eliminate risk, you can only respect it. You can't demand luck, you can only prepare for it. That's the secret balance. As Morgan reminds us, you can't believe in luck without equally respecting risk. They're two sides of the same coin. When luck smiles at you, remember, it can also look the other way. And when risk knocks you down, remember, it doesn't last forever. The world has a funny way of balancing things out over time. So when you succeed, stay humble. And when you fail, stay calm. Because nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems. 1, luck and risk are everywhere. Every outcome in life is partly influenced by forces you can't control. 2, be humble about success. Not all victories are purely earned. Appreciate the unseen hands that helped you. 3, be kind about failure. Not every loss is a mistake. Sometimes it's just life being unpredictable. 4, don't copy extremes. Study common patterns, not exceptional outliers. What's normal is often more useful than what's famous. 5. Respect uncertainty. Plan for bad luck, but stay open for good luck. Both will visit you eventually. Life is a mixture of what you do and what happens to you. You can control your effort, your attitude, your preparation, but you can't control timing, luck, or fate. That's why the most powerful financial mindset is humble optimism. Work hard, but never think you're invincible. Plan carefully, but accept surprises with grace. The world rewards those who are prepared, yet humble enough to say, "I didn't do it all alone." If luck and risk are beyond our control, then how do we stop ourselves from always wanting more? More money, more success, more power, even when we already have enough. Because sometimes the real danger isn't losing everything. It's never feeling satisfied even after you've won. And that brings us to the next chapter, Lesson 3. Never enough. The endless race that destroys happiness. How much money is enough for you? Think about it. $10,000? $1 million? $10 million? Most people, when asked, hesitate, because the real answer is usually just a little more. But here's the strange truth Morgan Housel reveals in The Psychology of Money. If you don't know how much is enough, no amount will ever be enough. This chapter, Never Enough, is not about money alone. It's about human greed, comparison, and the dangerous illusion that more will finally make us happy. Let's dive deep into one of the most eye-opening lessons of the entire book. Rajat Gupta was born in India, lost both parents at a young age, and grew up in a modest household. Through intelligence, hard work, and relentless determination, he rose to become the CEO of McKinsey & Company, one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the world. He sat on the boards of Goldman Sachs, Procter & Gamble, and American Airlines. He had everything: wealth, power, respect, and influence. By 2008, Rajat was already worth over $100 million. But then something changed. In 2008, during the chaos of the financial crisis, Rajat Gupta did something shocking. He secretly leaked confidential information from Goldman Sachs board meetings to a hedge fund manager named Raj Rajaratnam. Why? Not for survival, not for need, but for more. He wanted to be a billionaire. He wanted to be on the same level as the people he advised, the ones he saw making billions through hedge funds and investments. And that tiny desire, just a little more, destroyed everything. Rajat Gupta was caught in an insider trading scandal. He was sentenced to prison, his reputation was shattered, his career ended, and his legacy gone.
All because he couldn't say the word enough. Ambition is good. It drives innovation, creativity, and progress. But greed? Greed crosses the line between success and self-destruction. Morgan Housel writes, "The hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. When you reach one milestone, another one appears, bigger, shinier, more tempting. You buy a house and then want a bigger one. You earn more and then want what your neighbor has. You start saving and then compare your returns with someone else's. It never ends." The problem isn't ambition, it's comparison. Because comparison makes you forget where you started. It makes you measure success by other people's lives instead of your own peace. Another perfect example of never enough is the infamous story of Bernie Madoff. Madoff was already a wealthy, respected figure on Wall Street,
He had a successful, legitimate business, powerful clients, and everything he needed for a luxurious life. But it still wasn't enough. He wanted to be seen as a financial legend, the man who could consistently deliver profits when no one else could. So he created one of the largest Ponzi schemes in history, stealing over $65 billion from investors. For decades, Madoff lived like a king until the lie collapsed. He lost everything: his wealth, his family, his reputation, his freedom. Morgan's lesson is simple. There is no reason to risk what you have and need for what you don't have and don't need. Think about that again. If you have enough to live well, why risk everything to chase more? Because no one wins the game of more. There's no finish line. You might ask, why do people like Rajat Gupta or Bernie Madoff risk everything when they already have so much? The answer lies deep in human psychology. Humans don't measure wealth in absolute numbers. We measure it relatively. It's not about how much you have, it's about how much you have compared to others. If your neighbor earns $200,000 while you earn $100,000, you'll feel poor, even though $100,000 is more than enough to live comfortably. That's why billionaires still compete with other billionaires. That's why millionaires compare their yachts. That's why no one ever truly wins. As Morgan says, the ceiling of social comparison is so high that virtually no one will ever hit it. There will always be someone richer, smarter, luckier, or more admired than you. So the real secret to happiness isn't chasing more, it's learning to stop. Here's the trap. People treat money like a finite game with winners and losers, but it's not. Money is an infinite game. There's no final score, no finish line, no endpoint where you can say, I've officially won. If you play the infinite game with a finite mindset, trying to beat others, you'll eventually lose. Because when you keep raising the stakes, you'll one day risk too much. And one wrong move, one unlucky event, can wipe it all out. That's why Morgan Housel calls financial contentment the ultimate advantage. It's not about how much you have, it's about how little you need to feel complete. Enough doesn't mean stopping ambition or rejecting success. It means knowing where to stop, where the price of more becomes greater than the reward. Morgan gives this timeless advice. Enough is realizing that the opposite, an insatiable appetite for more, will push you to the point of regret. So what is enough? Enough is when you can sleep peacefully at night. Enough is when you don't need to lie, cheat, or stress to maintain your lifestyle. Enough is when your happiness no longer depends on other people's approval. Because when you can say, I have enough, you finally become free. Here's the paradox. Money has no value unless you know how to stop needing more of it. You can earn billions and still be emotionally bankrupt if you're always chasing someone else's success. And you can live an ordinary life, yet feel incredibly rich if your heart is full of gratitude. The richest person is not the one who has the most, it's the one who needs the least. That's why many people with modest incomes live happier, calmer lives than millionaires who can't stop chasing the next deal. Morgan says, the only way to win is to refuse to play the game that everyone else is playing. Every time you achieve something, your mind shifts the target. You hit a goal and instantly want more. Got a promotion? Now you want a higher title. Bought a car? Now you want a better one. Reached 100K followers? Now you want 1 million. That's how the goalpost keeps moving, silently, endlessly. And the saddest part? You don't even realize it's happening. You think you're progressing, but you're actually running on a treadmill. Morgan compares it to the game of Tetris. No matter how many lines you clear, the game never ends. It just gets faster. That's life when you don't define enough. There's a moment in everyone's life where you must ask yourself,
What am I willing to risk, and what am I not? If you have a stable income, good health, and people who love you, why risk it all for a bit more status or wealth? Because one mistake, one scandal, one wrong decision, and everything can collapse overnight. Rajat Gupta risked freedom for status. Bernie Madoff risked legacy for illusion. Countless others risk peace for power. Morgan says it best. There are many things never worth risking: reputation, freedom, family, happiness, and peace of mind. Those things can't be bought back, no matter how rich you are. So what's the real reward of money? It's not the power to buy more things, it's the peace of not needing to buy more. True wealth is the calm that comes from knowing you're safe, satisfied, and free from the endless comparison game. That's why so many minimalists, monks, and quiet millionaires seem happier than those flaunting wealth. Because they know peace of mind is the most expensive thing money can buy, and ironically, it's free when you stop chasing more. 1. Enough is freedom. It's the moment you stop letting money control your emotions and choices. 2. Comparison is the thief of joy. Someone will always have more. Stop measuring your success by other standards. 3. Never risk what you have for what you don't need. The cost of greed is often your peace, reputation, or freedom. 4. The goalpost will never stop moving unless you stop it yourself. Happiness begins the moment you say, "I have enough." 5. True wealth is peace of mind, not the number in your bank, but the calm in your heart. We all start life wanting to make it, but few of us pause to define what making it really means. Without that clarity, we fall into the trap of chasing infinity. More money, more status, more everything. But the truth is, there's no trophy at the end of that race, only exhaustion. So maybe the secret to a wealthy life isn't working harder for more, but learning the quiet art of contentment. Because when you can finally say, "This is enough for me," that's when you truly become rich. If knowing enough brings peace, then why do some people still manage to turn small, consistent gains into extraordinary fortunes without greed, without obsession, and without risk? What's the real secret behind how small money grows into massive wealth over time? Quietly, almost magically. That's what we'll explore next in one of the most powerful lessons of this book.
Lesson 4, Chapter 4, Confounding Compounding. Have you ever wondered how a small seed turns into a giant tree? It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen with magic. It happens through time. That's exactly how compounding works. Quietly, slowly, invisibly, and then suddenly, all at once. Morgan Housel calls this chapter confounding compounding because even the smartest people underestimate the astonishing power of time. We think of money as a tool to earn more, but we forget the real secret isn't earning faster. It's staying invested longer. Let's take a real story, one that perfectly captures the magic we're talking about. Warren Buffett. Yes, the world's most famous investor. But here's what most people miss. Buffett isn't rich because he's a genius. He's rich because he's been investing since he was 10 years old. Think about this. Buffett's net worth is over $80 billion, and almost $81 billion of that came after his 50th birthday. Wait, how is that possible? Because compounding doesn't reward early effort, it rewards consistent time. Imagine you invest a small amount, say $1,000 at a 10% annual return. After 1 year, it becomes $1,100. But here's where the real magic begins. In year 2, you don't just earn interest on your $1,000, you earn interest on your interest too. So now you're earning on $1,100. That's called compound interest, earning returns on returns. Now keep going. Year after year, decade after decade, and your small $1,000 will quietly turn into $17,000 in 50 years. That's a 17x growth without doing anything except waiting. And yet, most people lose patience before the real magic begins. We live in a world that celebrates instant results, instant fame, instant money, instant success. But compounding laughs at instant. It only speaks the language of time. Housel explains that compounding works best not when you chase high returns, but when you stay invested long enough to let those returns multiply. Even a small, steady return, say 8% or 10%, will beat someone chasing 30% returns but quitting early. Why? Because compounding is like a snowball. At first, it's tiny, but as it rolls down the hill, it grows faster and faster, not because of strength, but because of momentum. And that's what the world misunderstands. The slow part of compounding is what makes the fast part possible. Take this perspective. If Warren Buffett had started investing at 30 instead of 10 and retired at 60 instead of 90, he would have made 99.9% less money. Yes, less money, even if his investment skills stayed exactly the same. The difference wasn't intelligence, it was time. The reason compounding feels so confusing, or confounding, as Housel calls it, is because human minds aren't wired to understand exponential growth. We think in straight lines, not curves. We imagine progress as step by step, but compounding grows silently and then explodes. For years, it feels like nothing's happening. Then suddenly, it feels unstoppable. That's why people give up. They don't see results fast enough. But if you learn to be patient in the slow phase, you'll be unstoppable in the fast one. Compounding doesn't just apply to money. It applies to habits, knowledge, relationships, and health. Read 1 page a day, you'll finish 30 books in a few years. Exercise 15 minutes daily, your body transforms in a year. Save a little every month, you'll buy your freedom decades earlier. The small, boring things you do today will quietly shape your future in ways you can't imagine. That's the beauty of compounding. It rewards consistency, not brilliance. Housel writes, "Good investing is not about making brilliant decisions. It's about consistently not screwing up. That means don't panic sell. Don't chase quick profits. Don't time the market. Just keep planting and watering your seeds. Because the magic happens not when you move fast, but when you don't stop." Let's take another powerful story, that of Grace Groner. She wasn't famous. She wasn't a Wall Street expert. She worked as a secretary her entire life, lived simply, and quietly invested in a few stocks. When she passed away, she donated over $7 million to charity. Everyone was shocked. How did she do it? Simple. She invested early, reinvested her dividends, and never touched her money. Time did the rest. Compounding doesn't care who you are, rich or poor, educated or not. It only cares whether you can stay patient long enough to let it work. Because compounding punishes impatience and rewards time. So when people ask, what's the best investment strategy? The answer isn't complicated. It's time plus consistency. Keep your money in motion. Avoid emotional decisions. Because every time you panic, sell, or switch, you break the chain of compounding. And that's like uprooting a tree before it bears fruit. So remember, you don't need to be a genius to build wealth. You just need to stay in the game longer than others. Compounding is the closest thing we have to magic in the real world, but it only reveals itself to those who respect time. Compounding is not about high returns. It's about long durations. The slow growth you see early is not failure. It's foundation. Most wealth is built through patience, not predictions. The earlier you start, the less you need to risk later. Your most powerful asset isn't money, it's time. If compounding is all about patience and time, then what's the biggest danger to your growing wealth? It's not a market crash, not inflation, not bad luck. It's something even more surprising.
In the next chapter, we'll explore why getting rich and staying rich are two completely different skills, and why one small mistake can destroy years of growth. So ask yourself, you know how to earn money, but do you know how to keep it? Lesson 4. Confounding compounding. There's a secret force in the world of wealth that most people never truly understand. It doesn't shout, it doesn't rush, it doesn't even need luck. It just waits, patiently. This force quietly transforms the small into the unimaginable. It turns ordinary savers into millionaires, and the patient few into legends. That force is compounding. Imagine planting a tiny seed in the soil. It's small, barely noticeable, but give it sunshine, care, and most importantly, time. That tiny seed becomes a tree. And one day, it bears fruit, which falls to the ground and grows into more trees. This is how compounding works. It's not just growth, it's growth on top of growth. It's the art of letting time turn your small efforts into extraordinary results. Morgan Housel calls this one of the most confounding or mind-bending concepts in finance. Because even though it's simple to understand, it's incredibly hard for people to actually believe in it. Why? Because compounding works slowly, until it works suddenly. Let's talk about the man who embodies compounding more than anyone else, Warren Buffett. When you hear his name, you probably think of genius-level investing, complex strategies, and billionaire success. But here's what most people miss. As of today, Warren Buffett's net worth is over $80 billion, and almost $81 billion of that came after his 50th birthday. Wait, how is that possible? Because compounding doesn't reward early effort, it rewards consistent time. Imagine you invest a small amount, say $1,000, at a 10% annual return. After 1 year, it becomes $1,100. But here's where the real magic begins. In year 2, you don't just earn interest on your $1,000, you earn interest on your interest too. So now you're earning on $1,100. That's called compound interest, earning returns on returns. Now keep going, year after year, decade after decade, and your small $1,000 will quietly turn into $17,000 in 50 years. That's a 17x growth without doing anything except waiting. And yet, most people lose patience before the real magic begins. We live in a world that celebrates instant results, instant fame, instant money, instant success. But compounding laughs at instant. It only speaks the language of time. Housel explains that compounding works best not when you chase high returns, but when you stay invested long enough to let those returns multiply. Even a small, steady return, say 8% or 10%, will beat someone chasing 30% returns but quitting early. Why? Because compounding is like a snowball. At first, it's tiny, but as it rolls down the hill, it grows faster and faster. Not because of strength, but because of momentum. And that's what the world misunderstands. The slow part of compounding is what makes the fast part possible. Take this perspective. If Warren Buffett had started investing at 30 instead of 10 and retired at 60 instead of 90, he would have made 99.9% less money. Yes, less money, even if his investment skills stayed exactly the same. The difference wasn't intelligence, it was time. The reason compounding feels so
confusing, or confounding, as Housel calls it, is because human minds aren't wired to understand exponential growth. We think in straight lines, not curves. We imagine progress as step by step, but compounding grows silently and then explodes. For years, it feels like nothing's happening. Then suddenly, it feels unstoppable. That's why people give up. They don't see results fast enough. But if you learn to be patient in the slow phase, you'll be unstoppable in the fast one. Compounding doesn't just apply to money. It applies to habits, knowledge, relationships, and health. Read 1 page a day. You'll finish 30 books in a few years. Exercise 15 minutes daily.
your body transforms in a year. Save a little every month. You'll buy your freedom decades earlier. The small, boring things you do today will quietly shape your future in ways you can't imagine. That's the beauty of compounding. It rewards consistency, not brilliance. Housel writes, "Good investing is not about making brilliant decisions. It's about consistently not screwing up." That means don't panic sell, don't chase quick profits, don't time the market. Just keep planting and watering your seeds. Because the magic happens not when you move fast, but when you don't stop. Let's take another powerful story, that of Grace Groner. She wasn't famous, she wasn't a Wall Street expert. She worked as a secretary her entire life, lived simply, and quietly invested in a few stocks. When she passed away, she donated over $7 million to charity. Everyone was shocked. How did she do it? Simple. She invested early, reinvested her dividends, and never touched her money. Time did the rest. Compounding doesn't care who you are, rich or poor, educated or not. It only cares whether you can stay patient long enough to let it work. Because compounding punishes impatience and rewards time. So when people ask, what's the best investment strategy? The answer isn't complicated. It's time plus consistency. Keep your money in motion. Avoid emotional decisions, because every time you panic, sell, or switch, you break the chain of compounding, and that's like uprooting a tree before it bears fruit. So remember, you don't need to be a genius to build wealth. You just need to stay in the game longer than others. Compounding is the closest thing we have to magic in the real world, but it only reveals itself to those who respect time. Compounding is not about high returns. It's about long durations. The slow growth you see early is not failure. It's foundation. Most wealth is built through patience, not predictions. The earlier you start, the less you need to risk later. Your most powerful asset isn't money, it's time. If compounding is all about patience and time, then what's the biggest danger to your growing wealth? It's not a market crash, not inflation, not bad luck. It's something even more surprising. In the next chapter, we'll explore why getting rich and staying rich are two completely different skills, and why one small mistake can destroy years of growth. So ask yourself, you know how to earn money, but do you know how to keep it? Lesson 4. Confounding compounding. There's a secret force in the world of wealth that most people never truly understand. It doesn't shout, it doesn't rush, it doesn't even need luck. It just waits, patiently. This force quietly transforms the small into the unimaginable. It turns ordinary savers into millionaires, and the patient few into legends. That force is compounding. Imagine planting a tiny seed in the soil. It's small, barely noticeable, but give it sunshine, care, and most importantly, time. That tiny seed becomes a tree, and one day it bears fruit, which falls to the ground and grows into more trees. This is how compounding works. It's not just growth, it's growth on top of growth. It's the art of letting time turn your small efforts into extraordinary results. Morgan Housel calls this one of the most confounding or mind-bending concepts in finance. Because even though it's simple to understand, it's incredibly hard for people to actually believe in it. Why? Because compounding works slowly, until it works suddenly. Let's talk about the man who embodies compounding more than anyone else, Warren Buffett. When you hear his name, you probably think of genius-level investing, complex strategies, and billionaire success. But here's what most people miss. As of today, Warren Buffett's net worth exceeds $80 billion. Yet $81 billion of that came
after his 65th birthday. Let that sink in. It means nearly 99% of his wealth was built not because of rare genius, but because he's been investing since he was 10 years old. He didn't just make great investments, he stayed invested for over 75 years.
If Buffett had started investing at 30 instead of 10 and retired at 60 instead of continuing, his net worth wouldn't be $80 billion. It would be around $11 million, just 0.01% of what it actually is today. So what made the difference? Not skill, not intelligence, not luck, just time. Time turned good returns into legendary results. That's the confounding magic of compounding. Let's play a small thought experiment. If I ask you to calculate this in your head, 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8, you'll say 72 almost instantly. It's simple, linear, predictable. But now, try this. 8 times 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 8. You can't do it easily, right? Because that's 134,217,728. That's the difference between linear growth and exponential growth. And our human minds aren't built to naturally understand exponential results. We expect progress to be constant, but compounding doesn't play by those rules. It starts slow, invisible, almost boring, until suddenly it explodes. As Housel says, good investing isn't about earning the highest returns. It's about earning pretty good returns that you can sustain for the longest period of time. Because compounding is like a snowball rolling down a hill. At first it's tiny, but as it keeps rolling, it gathers more snow, and eventually it becomes unstoppable. Most people want instant success. They chase high-risk, high-reward ideas, trying to double their money overnight. But compounding teaches the opposite. The key isn't intensity, it's consistency. If you earn modest returns but do it consistently for decades, you'll outperform those who chase quick wins. Let's go back to Buffett. He's not the world's greatest investor because he earns the highest annual returns. He's the greatest because he's been earning steady returns for the longest time. In fact, another investor named Jim Simons, founder of Renaissance Technologies, has achieved far higher yearly returns than Buffett. Simons compounded at 66% per year for decades, while Buffett averaged around 22%. Yet Buffett is worth 4 times more than Simons. Why? Because Simons started late, and time never gave him the same compounding runway. In Housel's words, Buffett's skill is investing, but his secret is time. That's the real formula. Skill plus time plus patience equals wealth. Let's step outside money for a moment. Think about technology. In the 1950s, IBM made a computer hard drive that could store 3.5 megabytes. By the 1990s, computers could store a few hundred megabytes. Not bad, steady progress. But then, compounding took over. In the next 2 decades, storage exploded from hundreds of megabytes to hundreds of terabytes. That's not progress, that's a revolution. Because exponential growth doesn't look powerful at first. It looks ordinary until suddenly it changes everything. The same applies to investing, business, and even personal growth. The early years feel slow, almost pointless, but if you stay patient long enough, the results become astonishing. Compounding rewards those who wait. Here's the paradox. Everyone knows about compounding, but very few believe in it. Why? Because it requires the one thing most people don't have: patience. It's not hard to save money. It's hard to wait while that money grows slowly for years, without touching it, without chasing excitement. Our world celebrates speed, fast results, viral success, overnight fame. But compounding belongs to the quiet, the patient, the long-term thinkers. It's boring in the short term, yet extraordinary in the long run. And that's why Housel calls it confounding. It confuses the impatient and rewards the disciplined. Compounding is not just a mathematical formula. It's a behavioral skill, a test of temperament. It's not about finding the next big investment. It's about staying calm when the market crashes, It's about continuing to save when others are spending. It's about playing the long game when everyone else is chasing the next shiny thing. Because in the short term, compounding looks invisible. In the long term, it looks like magic. Morgan Housel writes, "None of the 2000 books written about Warren Buffett are titled, 'This guy has been investing consistently for 75 years. But that's the key to his success." And it's true, everyone focuses on Buffett's stock picks, but his real advantage is time. If you understand that, you realize that wealth isn't built by brilliance, it's built by endurance. You don't need to be a genius, you just need to be consistent and stay in the game longer than others. Let's visualize it. If you invest rupees 10,000 today and earn 10% yearly, you'll have 11,000 next year. That's not impressive, but after 30 years, that same 10,000 becomes over 1,74,000. That's not luck, that's time working for you. And the most powerful part is, if you miss even a few of those compounding years, your long-term gains collapse. Because compounding is fragile, it only works if you let it breathe. Now let's go beyond finance. Think about relationships. Every act of kindness, every moment of trust compounds over time into strong bonds. Think about learning. Every page you read compounds into wisdom. Even health, daily small habits, eating right, sleeping well, exercising, compound into longevity and strength. Compounding is the universal law of growth in money, in mindset, and in life itself. The problem with compounding is that it works only if uninterrupted. One big mistake, one moment of panic can destroy years of progress. For example, if you pull your investments during a market crash, you're not just losing money, you're breaking the compounding chain. That's why the most important financial skill isn't analysis, it's endurance. Staying calm, staying consistent, staying invested. Because compounding rewards the survivors. Morgan Housel jokes that the most powerful book about wealth should be titled, "Shut Up and Wait." One page, one sentence, one chart showing long-term economic growth. That's it. Because that's the entire secret. We overcomplicate wealth. We chase quick gains, new trends, crypto coins, and risky schemes. But in the end, compounding says, slow down, be patient, let time do its work. The less you interrupt compounding, the more powerful it becomes. The world glorifies the overnight success, but real success, financial or personal, is built slowly, quietly, one step at a time. Compounding teaches us humility. It teaches us that time is the most valuable resource, not money, not opportunity, not talent. You can't rush greatness. You can only nurture it day after day, year after year. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary is simply time. Compounding is nature's way of rewarding patience, and patience is humanity's rarest virtue. So if you truly want to build wealth, success, or wisdom, stop asking, how fast can I get there? And start asking, how long can I stay? Because in the end, compounding doesn't reward the smartest. It rewards the most consistent.
Timing. The length of time you stay invested matters more than when you start. Consistency beats brilliance. Even average returns create enormous wealth when allowed to compound. Patience is profit. The less you interrupt compounding, the stronger it grows. Avoid one-time disasters. Compounding is fragile. Protect it at all costs. Apply it beyond money. Every habit, every relationship, every lesson compounds over time. And now, as we close this lesson, think deeply about this. You've just learned the timeless power of compounding, the quiet miracle that turns time into wealth. But here's the real question. If time is your greatest financial weapon, what happens when you start fighting against it instead of with it? That's exactly what we'll explore in the next lesson. Getting wealthy versus staying wealthy, where Morgan Housel reveals why the same behavior that helps you earn money can also make you lose it all. Lesson 5.
Getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. There's a million ways to get wealthy, but there's only one way to stay wealthy. A delicate mix of frugality, humility, and paranoia. We often celebrate stories of people who built fortunes, the entrepreneurs, the investors, the dreamers. But far fewer people talk about those who managed to keep their wealth once they got it. Because getting rich and staying rich require opposite skills. Think about it. The skills that help you get money are usually the same ones that can make you lose it all. Courage, risk-taking, confidence. They're the engines of success. But once you're successful, those same traits can become dangerous. They turn into overconfidence, greed, and recklessness. To stay wealthy, you need something very different. Caution, survival instinct, a quiet fear of losing it all. That's the paradox Morgan Housel highlights in this chapter. Getting money requires taking risks. Keeping money requires humility. To understand this, let's go back 100 years to the story of Jesse Livermore, one of the most famous stock traders in history. Jesse was a legend. In the early 1900s, he was known as the boy plunger, a man who made and lost fortunes in the stock market many times over. By the age of 30, he was worth over $100 million in today's value. He lived in luxury, owned mansions, yachts, and was admired by investors worldwide. Then came 1929, the Great Depression. The stock market crashed, wiping out millions of investors overnight. But not Jesse. He had bet against the market, shorting stocks, and when everything collapsed, he made a killing. His profits were so enormous that he became a legend. Newspapers called him the man who broke Wall Street. When he came home that day, his family was in tears, thinking they had lost everything. But Jesse smiled and said, "No, darling, I've just had my best day ever." He was at the top of the world. But here's the twist. Within a few years, Jesse Livermore lost it all. Every dollar. Not because he forgot how to trade, but because he couldn't control his emotions. He became overconfident, took bigger risks, and believed he could never lose. He went from millionaire to bankrupt to tragic. His story is a painful reminder. Getting rich makes you bold. Staying rich requires you to stay humble. Morgan Housel says, getting money is one thing, keeping it is another. To build wealth, you must believe in your ability to win. But to keep it, you must always remember you can lose. It's like sailing. When the sea is calm, it's easy to feel like you're in control. But the real sailors, the wise ones, never forget that storms can come at any moment. They respect the sea. They never assume safety. And that's why they survive longer. In the same way, the wealthy who endure are those who stay grounded, cautious, and aware that luck and risk are always at play. So what does it take to stay rich? Morgan gives us 3 invisible tools. Frugality, the discipline to live below your means even when you don't have to. Humility, the awareness that success is never guaranteed. Paranoia, the quiet fear that keeps you alert and prepared for anything. Frugality protects you from greed. Humility protects you from arrogance. Paranoia protects you from surprises. These aren't glamorous traits, but they are what separate the temporary rich from the permanently wealthy. Here's a hard truth. Wealth is fragile. It takes decades to build and one bad decision to destroy. That's why Housel reminds us, the key to long-term wealth is survival.
You don't have to be right all the time. You just need to avoid the kind of mistakes that take you out of the game. Think about it like this. To win a race, you don't need to run the fastest. You just need to not fall off the track. In investing and in life, survival is victory. The biggest threat to your wealth isn't inflation, recession, or even bad luck. It's your own confidence. The more success you experience, the more you start to believe you're invincible. You forget the role of chance and you start taking bigger bets, the kind that can wipe you out. Housel calls this the illusion of control. You think you're in charge, but in reality, luck and risk are dancing around you, quietly deciding your fate. That's why the rich who last, the Buffetts, the Mungers, always think about what could go wrong, even when everything's going right. They don't fear failure, but they respect it. Housel says that success in money isn't about being a genius, it's about survival. It's about designing your financial life in such a way that no single mistake can wipe you out. That means always having a margin of safety, extra cash for emergencies, keeping your debts low, avoiding all-in bets, preparing for bad times when things are good. Because if you can stay in the game long enough, compounding, that quiet miracle from the last chapter, will do the rest. The longer you survive, the greater your advantage. In the words of Housel, you have to avoid ruin at all costs. You don't need to be rich to be wealthy. You just need to stay in the game long enough. There's one more secret weapon the wealthy use: emotional control. When markets crash, most people panic and sell. When markets rise, they get greedy and overbuy. That's why the average investor underperforms the market. The wealthy who last, on the other hand, stay calm. They understand that volatility is the price you pay for long-term returns. They don't chase excitement, they seek endurance. And that's the difference between getting rich and staying rich. Jesse Livermore's story shows us what happens when success blinds us. Warren Buffett's story shows us what happens when patience grounds us. Between those two lies the truth. It's not about how fast you climb. It's about how well you hold your ground when the winds of fortune shift. Because in the end, money doesn't reward the bravest or the boldest. It rewards the survivors. Getting wealthy takes risk and optimism. Staying wealthy takes humility and fear. The biggest financial skill is not brilliance, it's survival. Never forget that luck and risk are two sides of the same coin. The goal isn't constant growth, it's staying in the game long enough for growth to compound.
True wealth is calm, not flashy, not reckless, not noisy. Now that you understand how to stay rich, let's go deeper. Because there's something even more powerful than wealth, something money alone can't buy. It's not about numbers or assets. It's about the feeling of being free. So here's a question to leave you thinking. If wealth is about survival, then what does true financial freedom really mean? And how can you achieve it without losing your peace of mind? That's exactly what we'll discover in the next lesson. Lesson 6, Freedom, where Morgan Housel reveals why time, not money, is the ultimate form of wealth. Lesson 6, Freedom. Imagine this. You wake up in the morning without an alarm clock. No emails waiting. No boss calling. No rush. You make your coffee slowly, walk outside, and take a deep breath of peace. You're not the richest person in the world, but in that moment, you're free. This, Morgan Housel says, is true wealth.
not the size of your bank account, but the ability to wake up and say, I can do whatever I want today. Because the highest dividend money pays is control over your time. When people think about being rich, they imagine luxury cars, mansions, designer clothes, and expensive vacations. But Morgan Housel argues that none of these are the true indicators of wealth. You see, those things often represent consumption, not freedom. The more stuff you own, the more you depend on maintaining that stuff. The loans, the payments, the stress. True wealth is something simpler. It's the freedom to choose how you spend your day, who you spend it with, and what you give your attention to. Money buys you time, and time, once lost, can never be bought back. That's why Housel says, it's controlling your time that's the highest dividend money pays. Now here's a strange truth. Most people work hard for years chasing money, believing that more money will give them freedom. But in the process, they give up the very thing they were chasing, their time. They work late nights, weekends, endless hours, telling themselves, I'm doing this for freedom. I'll rest later. But later never comes. Housel calls this the paradox of wealth, where the more you earn, the less free you sometimes become. Because with more money often comes more responsibility, more expectations, and more dependence on others' opinions. So you end up trading your time for success instead of using success to buy back your time. There's something deep inside every human being, a desire to control our lives. Think about it. We feel stressed not when we're busy, but when we feel we have no control over our schedule. The freedom to say no to unwanted tasks, people, or demands is one of the most valuable luxuries money can buy. It's not about laziness, it's about autonomy. Housel writes that almost every financial goal, whether it's early retirement, financial independence, or passive income, is actually just a different way of saying one thing. I want to control my time. When you understand this, money stops being about status and starts being about peace. Morgan Housel himself shares something personal in this chapter. He says that when he started earning well, he thought buying more things would make him feel successful. But eventually he realized that what made him happiest wasn't luxury, it was flexibility. He and his wife made a simple rule. We value independence over luxury. They chose a modest home, kept their lifestyle simple, and saved aggressively, not because they feared poverty, but because they wanted freedom. He discovered that financial freedom isn't about never working again. It's about working on your own terms. That's the difference between a job you have to do and a job you want to do. But here's the danger. The world constantly pushes us to compare. We see others buying more, spending more, showing more, and we start to feel less. That's how freedom slips away, not through loss of money, but through loss of contentment. When you always need more, you become a prisoner of your own desires. You might earn millions, but you'll never feel free. Morgan Housel reminds us that wealth isn't about how much you have. It's about how little you need to feel satisfied. Because the less you need to buy happiness, the freer you are. Let's think about this. Every dollar you save buys you future time. Every unnecessary expense sells a piece of your freedom. So when you save and invest, you're not just building wealth, you're buying options. Options to take a break. Options to say no. To spend time with your loved ones without guilt. In other words, saving money isn't about greed. It's about control. You're not saving money to buy stuff. You're saving it to buy back your life. Now, freedom doesn't always mean quitting your job or living off investments. Sometimes it's much smaller, quieter, but just as powerful. Freedom might mean taking a day off when you need rest, choosing a career you love, not just one that pays more,
working fewer hours to spend more time with family, saying no to people or situations that drain your energy. These are the micro freedoms that build a truly wealthy life. And they're available to anyone, not just millionaires, because freedom is a mindset before it's a bank balance. Many people dream of retiring early, but retirement isn't the goal. Independence is. You don't need to stop working to feel free. You just need to work because you choose to, not because you have to. When you reach that point where money no longer controls your choices, you've reached financial freedom. That's when money stops being a master and becomes your servant. Morgan Housel says, money's greatest intrinsic value, and this can't be overstated, is its ability to give you control over your time. That's the ultimate reward. Not applause, not status, not luxury, but waking up every day and knowing you own your time. So what's the real lesson of freedom? It's that money should serve your life, not the other way around. Because when you control your time, you control your happiness. And when you control your happiness, you've mastered the psychology of money. Freedom doesn't come from earning more. It comes from needing less and valuing time above everything else. If money's greatest reward is control over your time, then why do so many people keep trading all their time just to earn more money? That's the question Morgan Housel explores next in Lesson 7, The Man in the Car Paradox, where he reveals a surprising truth about how we misunderstand respect, admiration, and the illusion of wealth itself.
Lesson 7. The Man in the Car Paradox. Picture this. You're standing at a red light. A sleek red Ferrari pulls up next to you. You glance over, shiny rims, leather seats, a powerful engine humming like a beast. For a brief second, you think, wow, that guy must be rich. But here's the truth Morgan Housel reveals. In that moment, you weren't actually admiring the man in the car. You were imagining yourself in the car. That, right there, is what Housel calls the man in the car paradox. The paradox is simple but powerful. When we see someone living a life of luxury, driving an expensive car, wearing designer clothes, living in a mansion, we don't usually think, that person is amazing. We think, if I had that, people would admire me the same way. It's a mind trick, a misunderstanding of what admiration really is. People rarely admire you for your possessions. They admire themselves through your possessions. That's the illusion. That's the man in the car paradox. Everyone, rich or poor, wants one thing: respect. We want to be liked, noticed, appreciated, and there's nothing wrong with that. But somewhere along the way, we start confusing respect with recognition, and recognition with appearance. We begin to think, if I buy this, wear that, drive this, then people will admire me. But here's what actually happens. People notice the car, not the driver, the brand, not the person, the house, not the homeowner. You spend to impress, but end up invisible. That's the painful truth Housel exposes in this chapter. No one is impressed with your possessions as much as you are. When you buy expensive things hoping for admiration, you're actually seeking an emotional return, not a financial one. You're hoping people will see you the way you see the rich. But it doesn't work, because everyone else is too busy imagining themselves in your place. They're not thinking about you. They're thinking about them. So, you end up chasing an illusion, spending real money for imaginary respect. The most respected people in the world aren't the ones flaunting wealth. They're the ones who don't need to show it. Think about it. Warren Buffett still lives in the same modest home he bought in 1958. He drives an ordinary car, eats at McDonald's, yet he's admired globally, not for how he spends, but for how he thinks. Housel reminds us that wealth is invisible. It's the money you don't spend, the freedom you've built, the choices you've earned. When you understand this, you realize you don't need to impress anyone. You just need to control your need to be impressive. That's real confidence. That's real freedom. Let's get psychological for a moment. Humans are social creatures. For thousands of years, our survival depended on our reputation within the tribe. Being admired meant being protected. Being ignored meant being left behind. So, deep down, we still crave approval. It's wired into us. Modern marketing knows this and uses it. Every luxury brand sells not a product, but status. The car commercial doesn't show engines and mileage. It shows admiration, respect, envy. They're not selling you a car, they're selling you how you want others to see you. And the result? You end up spending your future trying to buy admiration in the present from people who won't even remember your name tomorrow. Here's the most ironic part. The more you spend trying to impress people, the fewer people you actually impress. Because the people truly worth impressing, the wise, the grounded, the self-aware, aren't impressed by money. And the people who are impressed by money will disappear the moment you lose it. So you end up in a race with no finish line, buying more, showing more, proving more, but never feeling enough. Morgan Housel calls this the trap of perception. You're chasing respect in the wrong direction. Real respect can't be bought. It's earned through character, kindness, and consistency. There's a liberating power in realizing that most people aren't actually thinking about you. That might sound harsh, but it's freeing. It means you don't need to perform. You don't need to constantly prove your worth. The moment you stop living for others' approval, you start living for your own peace. Housel beautifully puts it. People want to be admired for their wealth, but those admiring are imagining themselves with it, not you. So stop trying to buy admiration. Start building authenticity. Because confidence is silent, insecurity is loud. You want to be admired? Then stop chasing admiration. Focus on value, not vanity. Be the person who uplifts others, who listens, who creates, who helps, not the one who constantly signals success. When you focus on your craft, your values, and your kindness, respect follows naturally. Because people might forget what you wore, what you drove, or where you lived, but they will never forget how you made them feel. This chapter isn't about guilt. It's about awareness. Housel isn't saying, don't buy nice things. He's saying, don't buy them for the wrong reasons. Luxury, when enjoyed, can be wonderful. But when it becomes your identity, it turns into a prison. True wealth is peace of mind, not attention. And attention fades fast. So before buying that next status symbol, ask yourself, am I buying this because I love it, or because I want to be loved for it? That one question can change your financial future. In the end, the man in the car paradox teaches a timeless truth. People aren't thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are. So stop living to impress. Start living to express. Don't aim to look rich. Aim to be rich in time, purpose, and peace. Because admiration built on appearance disappears, but admiration built on authenticity lasts forever. People don't admire you for what you have. They imagine themselves having it. The most admired people are the ones who don't need admiration. Wealth is what you don't show. Respect is earned through behavior, not possessions. The less you need others' approval, the freer you become. So, now that you know that showing off wealth doesn't bring real respect, what does true wealth actually look like? If it's not the house, not the car, not the luxury, then where does real wealth hide? What if the richest people in the world are the ones you can't even see? That's exactly what we'll uncover in the next lesson. Lesson 8, Wealth is What You Don't See. A chapter that will completely change the way you look at money, success, and your own financial goals.
Lesson 8. Wealth is what you don't see. We often think of wealth as something visible, luxury cars, branded clothes, and big houses. But Morgan Housel reminds us that's not wealth, that's spending. Wealth is quiet. It's the money you don't spend. It's the investments quietly compounding in your account. It's the financial cushion that gives you peace of mind. When you see someone driving a $200,000 car, you might assume they're rich. But that car means they had $200,000, and now they don't. Real wealth is the ability to say, I could afford that, but I choose not to. Wealth is invisible because it's hidden in savings, security, and time. And ironically, the more people try to look rich, the less likely they are to be rich. So the next time you see luxury on display, ask yourself, what am I not seeing? Because true wealth lives quietly in the background. But if wealth is invisible, how do we build it? That's the secret of the next lesson. Lesson 9, save money. Saving money isn't about greed, it's about freedom. It's the foundation of every wealthy life. People think saving is only for those with high incomes, but the truth is, saving has nothing to do with income and everything to do with behavior. Morgan Housel says, the first step toward building wealth is learning to live below your means, no matter what those means are. You don't save money for a specific reason, you save because life is unpredictable. Jobs change, emergencies strike, opportunities appear. Saving is about creating options. It's about saying, I don't have to rely on luck. I'm ready for whatever comes. It's not sexy, it's not flashy, but it's powerful. Because savings buy you the one thing money can't usually buy: control. And control leads us to something even more valuable: reason. Lesson 10, reasonable greater than rational. We often believe good financial decisions must be perfectly rational, but Morgan Housel says, you don't need to be rational, you just need to be reasonable. Rational decisions are made by economists. Reasonable decisions are made by humans. For example, paying off your home early might not make perfect mathematical sense, but if it helps you sleep better, it's the right choice for you. Money is emotional, and emotions can't be measured on spreadsheets. The best financial plan isn't the smartest, it's the one you can stick to. So stop chasing perfection, chase peace. Because reasonable decisions lead to lasting results, and that's what really compounds. Lesson 11. Surprise! The biggest financial lesson in history is this: the world always surprises us. Nobody predicted the internet, the 2008 crash, or a global pandemic. Yet every decade brings events that rewrite the rules. Housel reminds us the biggest risks are the ones you don't see coming. So instead of trying to predict the future, prepare for uncertainty. Save more than you think you need. Plan for bad times when things look good. Because the most important financial skill isn't forecasting, it's resilience. Lesson 12. Room for error. No matter how confident you are, always leave room for error. In finance, it's called a margin of safety, a cushion that protects you when life doesn't go as planned. It's the cash that keeps you calm during a market crash. It's the humility to admit you might be wrong. As Housel says, the most important part of every plan is planning on your plan not going according to plan. So be optimistic about the future, but paranoid enough to survive the surprises. Because survival is the real secret to long-term success. Lesson 13. You'll change. Here's a simple truth. You're not the same person you were 5 years ago, and 5 years from now, you'll change again. That means your financial goals, what you want, fear, and dream about, will evolve too. So don't lock yourself into rigid plans that don't allow growth. Design your life around flexibility. Today's ambition might become tomorrow's burden. Money gives you the freedom to adapt. Use it to build a life that fits who you become, not just who you are. Lesson 14. Nothing's free.
Everything has a price, even wealth. When you invest, you're not paying with cash, you're paying with volatility, fear, and patience. Every big reward in life comes with a hidden emotional cost. Stock markets crash, businesses fail, but those who stay calm during chaos, those who pay the emotional price, end up the wealthiest. There's no free lunch in finance. So the next time you feel scared during a downturn, remember that fear is the fee for success. Lesson 15. You and me. What's smart for you might be stupid for someone else, and what's smart for them might not work for you. Everyone's playing a different financial game, different timelines, goals, and fears. Day traders, long-term investors, retirees, and entrepreneurs, they're all making different moves for different reasons. So stop copying others, play your game. Lesson 16. The seduction of pessimism. Bad news sells. Pessimism sounds smart, while optimism sounds naive. But history shows us, progress always wins. Wars, recessions, and crises come and go, yet humanity keeps rising, innovating, and adapting. Housel says, pessimists sound like they're trying to help you. Optimists are the ones who actually do. So don't let negativity blind you to opportunity. Long-term optimism, paired with short-term caution, is the ultimate mindset for success. Lesson 17. When you'll believe anything. When people are desperate, they'll believe anything. During times of greed or fear, logic disappears. That's when bubbles form. That's when scams thrive. The lesson is simple. When emotions are high, intelligence gets low. The more desperate you feel, the more skeptical you should be. Because in the world of money, the easiest person to deceive is yourself. Let's bring all these lessons together. Wealth isn't about intelligence, it's about behavior. The formula is simple. Save consistently, be patient, stay humble, leave room for error, control your emotions. Respect luck and risk. Money is less about spreadsheets and more about self-awareness. If you can master your behavior, you can master your finances, no matter your income. Lesson 19. Confessions. In the final chapter, Morgan Housel steps out from behind the lessons and speaks from the heart. He admits he doesn't have all the answers. He saves more than necessary, avoids debt, and values peace of mind over luxury. He says, money's greatest value is that it gives you control over your time. His confession is simple. He's not obsessed with being rich. He's obsessed with being independent. Because real wealth isn't the ability to buy more, it's the ability to need less. Lesson 20. The ultimate truth. So what have we learned? Wealth isn't about brilliance, it's about behavior. It's not about timing the market, it's about staying in it. It's not about showing off, it's about showing restraint. The richest people aren't the ones with the most money. They're the ones who've learned to live peacefully, freely, and with purpose. The Psychology of Money isn't a book about finance, it's a book about life. If true wealth is peace and freedom, what kind of life are you really working to afford? Because maybe the goal isn't to earn more, but to finally decide how much is enough.